Alright, today we're going to be making a brand new tier list, ranking every meta unit in Anime Last Stand as of the most recent quality of life update. Do keep in mind the rankings in this video are just my opinion, so take everything with a grain of salt. I still hope you enjoy the video or find it helpful. If you do, maybe give a like or subscribe. But anyways, let's get into it. Okay, today we're going to be showing off with the rankings from my last tier list video, so if you have any questions about what you see here, be sure to go check that video out. Anyways, before we get into the brand new stuff, I do want to make quite a few changes to the list we have here, just to make it a lot more accurate. So first we want to move Cosmic Garo down. This guy, his damage is not too crazy anymore, his placement DPS is okay, but that's just kind of all. He's mostly a support now for his godly lead, is going to be a huge crit buff, the best buff in the game in my opinion, and he'll just kind of be in the top of the support tier. Itadori we're going to move to meta early. I would say he's going to go right here for now. He's just kind of okay for progressive because his placement damage is really good. He is ground only but really cheap to get to hybrid. And I'd say for the most part he's going to go into meta early because he's a really good starting unit. The fused form of Blue Gogeta, I have this guy in meta infinite, but a lot of you commented that he is actually obtainable or accessible in progressive modes because he's not that expensive to get going and you can easily get the 10 billion damage requirement. So I'm going to put him into meta overall. I'm going to put him right about here in meta overall for now. Just give me a minute to kind of sort everything out. Trust me, it'll make sense later. Tatsumaki's going to move down to support right below Medusa here. Boot Hill is going to move down to decent. He is okay for his crit damage, but I don't know, his placement is not as good as I thought it was. I'm going to put him right about here, below Kinshiro. Doflamingo is also going to move down to decent, and I put him right below Tengen. His support is just not consistent enough. His strings require a lot of application to actually work. He needs to hit something like 20 times, so not worth it. Not really a support at that point. Nami we're going to move into meta early because she is actually way better for placement damage than I realized. I put her actually above Twin Gun Reaper. She's really good. And then Granola is going to move down to decent, right below Power. His support is just not consistent enough. Same kind of thing as Doflamingo. He doesn't have very good uptime on his buffs pretty much, but he is good for his own damage. And then Buddha, we're going to move up to support. This guy is going to be the bottom of the support tier. He's just kind of an okay buffer. Nothing too crazy, and I think his damage is not good enough to be his main focus. And you kind of want to run him with other buffers to make him strong. Those were the most major changes with things that were kind of changing in the tiers they were placed. Now we're going to actually kind of move around the rankings in each tier. So Hikari I'm going to put above Sukuna. Hikari has really good DPS for a little bit in his ability. It has like around a 30 to something % uptime. And he does really good DPS. I think he's a lot more reliable in every game mode than Sukuna is. I'm going to say that Luffy is going to move down to below Sid. He's just not as good as Sid right now. Blue Gogeta is going to move down to right there. Asa is going to move down to right there with them. Sid and Law are a lot better than I thought right now. Light Shinra is going to move down a little bit to right above Goku. Sakura is going to move down to below Kefla. She still is really good for his raw damage and a little bit of buffing. Kashimo is going to go below Erza. His passive where he applies plasma per hit, I thought that applied to more than one enemy that he hits, but it's actually just the one strongest enemy. I don't know, there's like a little bit of wording with his passives that I got tripped up by, but he still is really good. Wukong is going to go down. This guy does have good DPS if you take a while to ramp him up, but I realize it takes a while to ramp him up fully. He is still cheap to get full AoE, so he can be good for progressive, but I'd say he's going to go below Sakura and Kefla in meta overall. Shadow is going to move up to above Meliodas because I think his permanent despair is a lot more valuable than I realized, and his own damage is also just really good. And his nukes are very strong for an infinite. He is actually a very good unit overall. And then Denji is going to move down below Shadow and right above Meliodas there. He is just a little bit too greedy. I've been trying to mess around with this guy more because I heard he was really good for DPS, and he is really good for DPS, but only his, because he's going to stun other units in his range, and it's going to be really inconvenient for your other strong teammates. So for the meta infinite tier, we're going to move Megumin, and we're going to go ahead and move her to above Angel. Right now, I think she is bugged for detonation to not apply properly, maybe, but her nuke is still really good, and if she worked properly, her nuke, her big one, would be doing like 30-something trillion, and her main DPS is also just really high. So, assuming the detonation works, I'd put her right here, but she might be bugged right now. I don't know, I don't like to rank stuff based off bugs. Gogeta, the very old one, I'm going to put him actually above Megumin because he is going to have a % nuke thing, like he's going to take away % of boss's HP. which is really good for infinite runs, because it is a spammable thing. Ryuk is going to go down to the bottom of the tier. The percent one-shotters are also just kind of like falling off, so Support Groom is going to go down to below Arthur. And then Nature Shinra is going to go down to below Julius here. He still does have the percent damage nuke, so he's still pretty good. Kenjaku is going to go below Giorno. His rewind is kind of more valuable than Kenjaku's nuke. Then Anos is going to go down to above Geto, below Giorno here. For the support tier, we're going to move Unohana down to below Lifa. And we're going to put Dio above Gojo. Now, some people don't realize how good Dio is, and he actually got shadow buffed. So he used to have like a 2 to 10% SPA reduction from one of his passives from stuff being placed near him. That is now like a 5 to 25%. I think he got shadow buffed at some point. And a 25% SPA reduction is really good, on top of another passive that can be a 15% SPA reduction and stack with other Dios. This guy can get SPA down to like 1, and he has really good time stop uptime. Overall, it's a very solid support, and people definitely underrate him right now. I'm going to put Water Shinra above Esdeath. He has a pretty good water buffing passive, and water units are just kind of going to value a lot more from him than Esdeath. And then Shisui is going to be above Buff Kurumi. I put him pretty low. His follow-up attack is very, very strong still. And then Katana Man, we're going to put above Asuna. He's actually not as bad as I thought. He does really good bleed and hemorrhage damage if you actually kind of have his SPA right and you stack both dots. He can do really good DPS, and I definitely underrated him before. With all those changes out of the way, hopefully those were kind of understandable. I tried to go by pretty quick so we wouldn't be here all day. We can actually get into the new stuff now. So this update, we got a couple of Demon Slayer and a couple of Devil May Cry characters, starting off with Tanjiro. Tanjiro is just going in decent. I'd recommend you go watch my showcase video. There were a couple changes. These units immediately got shadow buffed because they were so bad, and I do have it in my pinned comment. I got that info directly from a DM from a dev, so that was very accurate. Tanjiro, just kind of okay. He is going to be fully AoE on placement, so pretty good hybrid starter, but his DPS is just not good on placement. His SPA is very high. For Solar Flame, he doesn't have the range to kind of like give it time to ramp up by hitting stuff over and over, so he's just very bad on placement. If you wait for him to ramp up though, if you get him to like upgrade the third to last, I think, for like 500k, he gets an ability where he gains a bunch of different forms or whatever. And a couple of his forms he gains from that ability are very, very good. Like the dance form can do really good DPS with Bolt, and then the burning blood mode, burning bones maybe, mode can do really good DPS with blaze and hemorrhage, I believe. It just takes so long to ramp up that I don't think he's worth using. Overall, in my opinion, probably the worst unit of the update, because Yurichi got buffed. And we'll kind of talk about that. Yurichi's turn. I don't know, he's really good. I couldn't put him in meta early because he costs 1.5k. Definitely an honorable mention for for meta early, because he's really good for his placement damage. It is actually really solid with the new change that he got, which was a buff to this guy's Solar Flame damage is going to now do 350% always. You don't have to ramp it up at all. So that definitely is very good for placement damage, especially with all his other passives that kind of increase his damage to burning stuff, make him apply burn in his range, which actually he has really good SPA for, and then really good damage to bosses and everything. This guy is really good, or at least like pretty decent, top of decent, very good, but not meta for anything, because he's 1.5k, I can't put him in meta early, even though he's definitely an honorable mention. And then he is a very good boss killer, but you don't really need raw damage boss killers for infinite runs, because you just run like Yujo for all the damage and then a bunch of nuking and resetting people. Dante, definitely going in meta overall. His placement damage is good for meta early fire. They did make him hybrid on placement now, so he did kind of get buffed. And he's really good for early damage. If you put him in his devil mode, he gains a lot of damage. If you put him in the hot swap mode, which I think he gets at like one of the last few upgrades, he's going to have a bunch of different modes that he can cycle between. They have like a minute uptime, I think. A couple of his forms are really strong in the hot swap mode. His DPS is like very dependent on that, so depending on like what mode you keep him in, which again, only a minute uptime, he can do really good for like temporarily, kind of like Hikari. I still think he's a good unit, even if it's only a temporary buff. I think this guy can be very good for progressive. He does really good DPS and really good access to a bunch of different stats effects to be meta in infinite runs for sure. Now Virgil. Virgil, I actually have tried out in infinite runs. This guy, I'd say, is meta infinite. Because here's the thing, okay. Virgil owners, if you think he's good for progressive, don't get really mad at me, okay? He's okay for like early progressive unit. He is cheap enough to be an early hybrid unit. The problem with Virgil, and if you've built one, you can probably agree, even with a max crit skill tree, this guy's range is really bad. Okay, so he's 700 placement cost, he's cheap enough to be a meta early unit if he does enough damage, Hard progressive content, Virgil doesn't have enough range to actually chip them down in time. He does have stun on placement, so he can be like kind of a good progressive support, and okay progressive damage. Pretty much how this guy works is he is a crit scaling unit, he takes a while to fully ramp up, and once you get him to upgrade 12, which is about 500, 600k, I believe, which you can max him up at like wave 10 if you only upgrade him in your farms. He's going to gain access to a nuke ability, which is going to do like 500 times his damage, and that nuke can kind of ramp up every wave and do even more damage, which is really, really good. And in my experience, if you have the ability on auto, so an average of giving it 11 waves to ramp up because it is like a 250-second cooldown and every wave is like 24 seconds. The math on that is kind of rough, but pretty much, if you keep it on auto, with my Avatar Glorious one, this guy was doing 2 trillion per nuke. I think he's good for like clearing out waves and infinite runs kind of over time, continually wiping stuff out, but in my opinion, people say he's really good for progressive, I don't see it, his range just isn't there. He's a good unit, I'd put him meta infinite. Here we have the final rankings. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, this is just my opinion, so take everything with a grain of salt, and I'm open to all criticism. Sorry by the way if you can tell I sound tired in this video. I stayed up a lot grinding Infinite Castle, so maybe you'll see me on the leaderboard, and hopefully you'll see that video soon. Also, I stayed up a lot, making sure the steals would be pretty accurate, testing out all the new stuff, and I'm pretty confident I brought you guys an honest tier list, okay? I think I did a pretty good job, not to toot my own horn, but I think it looks pretty good. Anyways, thank you to my channel members for making this video possible, you guys are the best. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, hope to see you in the next one, and have a great day.